Welcome back, everyone, to the DRM News Podcast.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to try to get a grasp on the upcoming German federal election.
Yeah, it's February 23rd.
It's coming up quick.
Yeah.
And this one is a little bit different than the ones in the past.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of new, interesting things going on that we really need to dive into.
Absolutely.
So to get started, we've got this kind of unusual situation with the current chancellor.
Yeah, Scholz.
Scholz and the SPD.
Yeah, they're really behind in the polls right now.
Yeah, they're trailing behind quite a bit, potentially even
third place.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Especially for an incumbent chancellor.
Yeah. And then we have the CDU-CSU.
Led by Merz.
They seem to be trying to get back on top.
Yeah, they're trying to ride that wave back into power, but their support's actually declining.
Yeah, which is unexpected, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting.
It really is.
And then there's the elephant in the room, I guess we could say, or
The wolf.
the wolf. How about that?
The AFD.
Yeah, the AFD. They're surging in the polls.
Yeah, they're doing quite well.
So I want to unpack that a little bit because I know a lot of people have been asking about this.
Sure.
Like, what's driving their popularity? Is it just like general anxiety about everything that's going on, or?
I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
I think they've really tapped into some specific concerns,
Okay.
particularly around immigration,
Right.
economic anxieties, fears of cultural change,
Mm.
and they present themselves as the only ones with solutions.
Right.
So that really resonates with a certain segment of the population,
Okay. Yeah.
especially those who feel like they've been ignored by the mainstream parties.
So to make things even more complicated or interesting, depending on how you want to look at it, all the other major parties have said, no way.
Yeah, absolutely no coalitions with the AFD.
Yeah.
Completely ruled it out.
So that's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah, I think it really highlights how seriously they're taking the AFD's rise and how determined they are to kind of isolate them politically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to make the potential coalition scenarios after the election really interesting.
Right, because it's almost like a line in the sand, like you're either with us or against us.
Exactly.
So the AFD's out of the game, then that leaves who as the major players?
Well, you've got the CDU-CSU.
Okay.
They're trying to present themselves as the stable, the experienced option.
Okay.
But their leader, Friedrich Merz, he's been making some interesting moves.
Okay, like what?
He's taken a pretty sharp rightward turn,
Okay.
particularly on immigration.
Okay.
And, that's a big contrast to Merkel's more centrist legacy.
Right, yeah.
So
So is that going to help him or hurt him?
that's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a gamble.
Okay.
He might attract some voters who are concerned about immigration.
Right.
But he could also alienate moderates.
Right.
And I think some recent polls suggest that might be happening. There was a noticeable dip in support for the union after he proposed these stricter migration controls.
Okay, so it's clearly a very sensitive issue.
Absolutely.
And then we have the Greens.
Yeah, the Greens are interesting.
It seems like they're really positioning themselves as the kingmakers in this election.
They could be.
Yeah.
They're polling at around 14% right now.
Okay.
And that puts them in a really good position to be part of a coalition government.
Okay.
They could potentially partner with either the CDU-CSU or the SPD, depending on how things shake out.
Right.
And they're not afraid to use their leverage to push their agenda.
Right. So they could really tip the scales one way or the other.
Yeah, depending on who they decide to align with.
Okay, so this is getting complicated.
Yeah, it really is.
But we have one more player we haven't even talked about yet.
Oh, right. The Sahra Wagenknecht alliance.
Yeah, the BSW.
Yeah.
They're kind of the newcomers.
Yeah, they're the new kids on the block.
Yeah, so what's their deal?
It's fascinating, actually. There's really interesting mix of left-wing and conservative stances.
Okay, so it's like
It's kind of like, Bernie Sanders meets Tucker Carlson.
wow, that's a combination.
I know, it's very strange bedfellows.
Yeah.
But it seems to be attracting voters who are just disillusioned with the traditional parties.
Okay.
They're just looking for something different.
So what are some of the things that they're talking about?
Well, they've been getting a lot of attention for their opposition to increased defense spending.
Okay, which is a big issue right now, obviously, with the war. Yeah.
They're also quite critical of Germany's current level of support for Ukraine. And they have a more skeptical stance on immigration than a lot of other left-leaning groups.
Okay, so they're kind of like challenging a lot of the traditional assumptions.
Yeah, they're really shaking things up.
Yeah.
And they're tapping into a very specific segment of the electorate.
So with all these players and all these different issues that are at stake, I mean, it's really hard to predict
Oh, absolutely.
what's going to happen after this election.
Yeah, no one knows what the political landscape is going to look like
Yeah.
after February 23rd.
Okay, so another layer of complexity, I guess we could say, is this whole issue of migration and integration.
Yeah, that's front and center in this election.
Right, because this has always been a sensitive topic in Germany.
Oh, yeah.
But then this recent tragic incident.
With the Afghan asylum seeker?
Yeah, that's really ignited the debate.
Oh, absolutely.
So how has that affected the different parties?
Well, Merz in the CDU-CSU, they've really seized on this incident
Okay.
to push their stricter stance on immigration.
Okay.
They're really framing it as a matter of national security.
Okay, so they're really hitting that hard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's a calculated move, obviously,
Right.
to capitalize on public anxieties
Right.
and to differentiate themselves from the left. You know, they want to be seen as the strong leaders
Right.
who can provide security and stability.
But is it working?
That's the question.
Yeah.
You know, it's a mixed bag.
Okay.
Some voters might be drawn to that tough stance on immigration,
Okay.
but others might question its effectiveness
Right.
or its impact on Germany's image.
Okay.
You know, they don't want Germany to be seen as unwelcoming or intolerant.
Right.
And, you know, as we mentioned before, the polls show a dip in support for the union after Merz proposed that crackdown.
Okay, so it seems like voters are really paying attention.
Yeah, they're not just accepting any rhetoric.
Okay.
They want to see solutions.
Yeah.
They want to see how each party is actually going to address this complex issue
Yeah.
in a way that's both effective and humane.
Right.
It's a delicate balance.
For sure.
Yeah. It's a tough one for sure. And it's all connected really to another big thing on voters' minds right now, the economy.
Right.
Germany's, you know, facing this this period of stagnation.
Yeah.
And energy costs are going up.
Yeah. It's tough.
It's creating a lot of unease, I think.
Yeah, and that's when people start looking for someone to blame.
Exactly.
You know, and that's when things can get a little bit dangerous.
It's true. Economic worries can really fuel extremism, I think.
Right.
People get desperate.
Yeah.
They start looking for simple solutions.
Yeah.
And that's when those populist messages can really gain traction.
Right. And we're seeing that play out right now with the AfD.
Absolutely. They're really capitalizing on those fears
Yeah.
and anxieties.
So how are the other parties addressing the economic issues?
Well, there's a pretty clear divide, I'd say.
Okay, like what?
On one side, you've got the CDU, CSU, you know, Merz and his crew.
Yeah.
They're all about fiscal responsibility.
Okay.
You know, they're taking a more conservative approach to government spending.
Right. So basically saying we need to be careful with money.
Exactly.
Okay.
They argue that the best way to boost the economy is to create a good environment for businesses.
Okay.
You know, reduce bureaucracy, keep taxes low.
So basically the idea that if you help businesses, the benefits will trickle down to everyone else.
Yeah, that's kind of the philosophy.
Right.
You know, that the private sector is the engine of growth.
Right.
But then on the other side, you have the SPD and the Greens.
Yeah.
They're pushing for a more hands-on approach.
Okay.
You know, they want to see increased public investment.
What?
Oh, in key areas, you know, renewable energy infrastructure, social programs, things like that.
So they're saying the government needs to step in and help stimulate the economy.
Exactly.
Okay.
They believe that government spending can actually create jobs,
Right.
create opportunities for everyone.
And also help address these long-term challenges like climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of like this classic debate
Yeah.
about, you know, the role of government.
Yeah, individual responsibility versus collective action.
Right. And that must make these coalition talks even more difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how do you reconcile those two very different perspectives?
It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, because, I mean, the CDU, CSU, they're all about fiscal conservatism.
Right.
And the SPD and the Greens want the government to spend more.
Exactly.
So someone's going to have to compromise.
Big time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the issue of climate change, which is another big one that's going to require some serious negotiation.
Yeah. I mean, Germany's always been a leader in environmental protection.
Absolutely.
So this is definitely a key issue for voters.
Oh, for sure.
So what are the sticking points here?
Well, as you might expect, the Greens are pushing for fast action.
Okay.
You know, they want ambitious targets for reducing emissions,
Okay.
a rapid shift to renewables,
Right.
major investments in green technology.
So full speed ahead to a carbon neutral future.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, but what about the other parties? Are they on board with that?
They all acknowledge that climate change is important, obviously.
Okay.
But their approach tends to be more cautious, I'd say.
Okay.
They're talking about balancing environmental protection with economic competitiveness.
Which basically means moving more slowly.
Yeah, they're not as eager to rock the boat.
So it's about the pace of change, really.
Yeah, exactly.
How quickly are we going to make these changes?
Exactly.
And then, of course, we have this whole other issue of foreign policy and defense.
Yeah, which has become even more complex.
Right, with the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, it's really changed the game.
And of course, we can't forget about Wagenknecht and the BSW.
Right.
Their stance on this is pretty different from the mainstream parties.
Oh, yeah. They've been very vocal about their opposition to increasing defense spending.
Right, which a lot of other parties are calling for.
Exactly.
And they're critical of Germany's support for Ukraine.
Yeah, they're arguing that sending weapons is just prolonging the conflict.
Right.
They'd rather see a negotiated settlement.
Okay.
And they see increasing defense spending as a waste of resources.
Okay.
They'd rather see that money go to social programs.
So they're really challenging the traditional consensus on foreign policy.
Yeah, they're definitely a dissenting voice.
Yeah.
They're questioning the assumptions that have guided German foreign policy for decades.
And that's resonating with some people.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a segment of the population that's very wary of military intervention.
Right.
And concerned about the economic costs of supporting Ukraine.
Yeah, so this all feeds back into this overall sense of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
That we're seeing in the polls.
The electorate is really volatile right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the CSU is losing support.
Yeah.
The SPD is struggling to gain any real momentum.
Right.
And the AFD is taking advantage of all this chaos.
Yeah.
It's a very unpredictable situation.
So what do you think is driving these shifts?
Well, I think it reflects the anxieties that people are feeling.
Yeah.
They're looking for answers. Yeah.
But they're not sure who to trust.
Right.
The CSU's rightward turn might be alienating some moderate voters.
Okay.
The SPD is struggling to present a clear vision for the future.
Okay.
And the AFD is exploiting those fears and divisions.
Yeah.
Offering these simple solutions to complex problems.
It's a fascinating but also kind of a scary picture.
It is.
Yeah, with so much at stake, it's really impossible to say what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, it really does feel like Germany's at this crossroads right now.
It does.
And like you said, I mean, the decisions they make in this election are going to have a ripple effect.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Throughout Europe and maybe even beyond.
Absolutely.
It's not just about Germany anymore. It's
about the direction of Europe.
Yeah.
As a whole.
And how they're going to deal with all these global challenges.
Exactly.
So let's try to sum this all up.
Okay.
So basically, we've got this very fragmented political landscape.
Yeah.
No clear winner.
Yeah. The traditional parties are kind of scrambling.
They're trying to figure out how to adapt.
Yeah. To this new reality.
The voters are changing. Their priorities are shifting.
And then you've got the AFD. They're really taking advantage of all this.
Yeah, they're exploiting the anxieties.
Yeah.
The divisions.
The Greens, they're kind of in this powerful position.
Yeah, they could really tip the scales.
Yeah.
Depending on who they decide to partner with.
And then there's the BSW, this wild card.
Yeah, they're shaking things up.
Yeah.
With their unique blend of populism.
And through all of this, we've got these huge issues.
Immigration, the economy, climate change, foreign policy.
It's a lot.
It is.
And each party has their own ideas about how to deal with all this.
Yeah, and the voters are trying to figure out.
Yeah, who do they trust?
Exactly.
To lead them through these uncertain times.
It's a tough choice.
Yeah.
A lot to weigh.
So it's really more than just about picking a chancellor.
It's about so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's about Germany's identity.
Yeah.
Its place in the world.
Its value.
The stakes are very high.
Yeah, they are.
No doubt about it.
So I guess the question for everyone listening is,
how is this all going to play out?
Yeah, how is this going to shape the future of German democracy?
And its role in the world.
Yeah, that's the big question.
The million-dollar question.
And we're going to be watching closely.
Oh, yeah.
As the campaign unfolds.
It's going to be fascinating.
So thanks for joining us today on the DRM News Podcast.
We appreciate you listening.
We're going to keep following this story as we get closer to February 23rd.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned.
There's a lot more to come.
It's going to be interesting.
For sure.